Hello, everybody. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Holly Elmore. Holly is the Harvard PhD wife of Ronnie Fernandez, mentioned in the intro of episode 11. She's been a longtime effective altruism organizer. She previously worked on wild animal welfare before her recent transition into becoming an AI pause advocate. Welcome to the filing cabinet.
Great to be here.
Yeah, so on Twitter, you describe yourself, if I remember correctly, as an AI pause advocate. What is AI pause?
That name is still, it's not clear what we're going to converge around. When I say pause, I mean an indefinite pause at a global level on frontier AI development.
Okay. So when you say indefinite, just do you mean literally forever or like until
it's safe? And I say indefinite because I don't want to promise that there's a benchmark where it will be safe.
Okay.
I don't know that.
All right. So yeah, for people who might not know, why would that seem like a good idea? What would be good about indefinitely pausing AI development?
Well, we're developing intelligences, and the whole point of developing them is so that they'll be able to do things that we can't. They'll exceed our capabilities. And we're not caught up in that project on the safety side. And at this point, I'm not an expert on AI alignment, which is the project of aligning the values and the behavior of AI with what's good for humans. But to me, it doesn't seem like we're close to having figured that out, and like that capabilities are going to keep surging ahead of safety. And so for now, what we need is more time to either figure alignment out, or we need to just not go ahead in case there is no way to align powerful AI.
And what bad thing would happen if we had really powerful AI and it wasn't aligned?
I think a lot of bad things could happen. So there's the most doomy scenario is that all of a sudden a really powerful super intelligence could turn on us, take that sharp left turn, and do something to stop humans from affecting its goals, or just do something that doesn't take human welfare into account and cause a lot of suffering. I think even AI alignment nominally going right, but changing human life so much that we don't have a lot of the things that we value now would be bad. So even if AI just does everything we want and it really exceeds at its goals. It's trying to create a really great life for humans. It creates really good entertainment. It does all of our jobs for us. But then if it turns out that humans aren't connected to each other anymore, I think that would be bad. So even scenarios where AI development goes nominally really well, I think could end up bad if we don't have time to absorb what the full consequences of that will be for our society. So what I like about the pause position is that it's robust against all of these outcomes. It's hard to predict what a more intelligent agent than us is going to do. So given that there's a lot of possibilities that we can think of and probably lots of things we can't think of, the pause option seems best to me because it's hard to anticipate. It's hard to, come up with workarounds for things that we don't know are going to happen.
Yeah. Makes sense. I guess at this point, I would like to show. I have another podcast called the AI X-Risk Research Podcast, or AXRP, where I interview people who are doing, mostly people who are doing technical AI alignment research. So if people are interested, they can check that out. I think it's probably the one you probably want to check out episodes 12 and 13, where Paul Cristiano and Richard Ngo respectively talk about why AI might doom humanity, basically. So I don't
have a super strong position like P-Doom is 99% or something like that. I don't think that's necessary to endorse the pause position. I think just saying we need more time to figure this out, or we need more time to know it's safe, rather than we need to just not have some concrete scenario of doom is, I think, the way to proceed.
Okay. And what do you do? So I guess you advocate AI pause. What does that cash out as actually doing?
I'm pretty much in a spinning up phase. What I do day to day is just have a million phone calls.
Okay.
And I think honestly, when I've done organizing before as well, I used to organize Harvard Effective Altruism for many years during my long PhD. And I think what really was the most valuable thing about what I did was being a shelling person that everybody knew they could talk to about organizing activities. They could, ask for like networking for their careers. They could just kind of a factotum sort of person.
Hmm.
That's the role I've been like already playing in the space since I quit my other job to do this. But I do think to be the best version of that, you should have like a flagship thing that you do,
Hmm.
some kind of programming that you run, if for no other reason to like advertise you as competent to be the factotum person.
Hmm.
So I am trying various things. I'm doing we just had to change the date of this because the UK summit date was announced and it was earlier than we thought. But
Hmm.
I'm planning a multi-city protest for protest demonstrations just to provisionally, I think the title of the Bay Area one is going to be AI Safety First, to encourage the UK summit to be focused on safety.
Hmm.
And that's kind of a large effort. We're doing multiple cities. I'm partnering with Pause AI. I'm independent. I'm partnering with Pause AI. We're probably partnering with it's not certain, but maybe some other Canadian AI safety orgs, and we're gonna have it in multiple cities across the world. I keep going back to protests because the media just really like gets them and like
Hmm.
understands what you mean. And I think that my theory of mind of the public is that like they believe that if they believed what we believe about the danger of unaligned AI, that they would be talking about it. They'd be trying to convince people of their position. They would be doing protests. They would be like writing articles in Time like Eliezer did. I think that these are the actions that are most legible to the public. And I think there's still a lot of alpha in like doing that to demonstrate to the public, like, this is actually what we think.
Okay, cool. And
So I guess I didn't fully answer that question. So the kinds of things I've been doing, I've been trying to just like do whatever I think is most neglected, like the biggest opportunity right now that I don't see other people covering in EA and in the existing AI safety space. There's a lot of what you would call inside game. So I guess I'll explain the inside outside game model. So inside game is kind of like working within the industry or within the system or more privately, trying to negotiate remedies. And then an outside game is something more like appealing to the public, trying to get laws passed, trying to get regulation on something. So it's really, this spectrum is really well developed in animal advocacy, which is, my previous job was related to animal advocacy. And, in animal advocacy, there's like everything from just taking a job in an animal agriculture company because you think you would be better and more compassionate than the next person, all the way to like, direct action everywhere, like breaking into factory farms and freeing the animals. Like that would be like the most like outside game, like trying to appeal to taking direct action and like trying to show the public like this is what we think, this is what makes sense given what we think, like these animals are prisoners and they should be freed. So I see in the current AI safety landscape, there's almost everything is inside game, which makes sense because the Overton window, what's sort of acceptable to say in public didn't really accommodate AI safety messages until recently. Like they seem too sci-fi, but it seems like with the release of Chat GPT, like the public's mind changed. And then the FLI letter and Eliezer's piece in Time kind of revealed those sentiments. There were polls after that showed like over half of people pretty much agreed with the not with the pause position, but agreed with caution and being deliberate on AI, and would agree to statements like I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but they would agree to statements like AI could be an existential threat, and so stuff that used to just be. I think most people in AI safety have been around long enough to remember when that stuff was just considered ridiculous. Like people would be like, "Oh, are you talking about Terminator?" And by the way, I think Terminator is not such a bad story for AI. I don't know why we disavow it so much.
Yeah, there's a Vox piece about this, or was it Matt Iglesias or something? Yeah, it's like I think the thing people disavow is, or I don't know, when I imagine the movie Terminator, in part I don't know. So there's this logical deduction of it was in a fictional movie, so it can't happen, which is like kind of not legit. Also, like I think the actual Terminator is like time traveling, which doesn't seem very. I don't think that's going to happen. And also, I think like is sort of a large human, like a physically muscular human.
But he can
basically
take on multiple forms.
Yeah, I mean, I admit that I don't remember the movie super carefully. Yeah, I mean, there's like.
And then
I
it's
also think
perverse instantiation. Like that's what Skynet is doing. It was trying to follow an objective that was given to it, right?
Yeah. Which is
Which is
yeah,
not the paradigm anymore that we're talking
yeah.
about, but
I
like
think
actually,
it's an well, it's
yeah.
yeah. I think like yeah. So in part, I'm like, okay, I don't think it's just going to be a guy, although maybe it wasn't just a guy. In part, there's like I think it could be worse than Terminator.
Yeah.
And in part, like in Terminator, it like takes a while and the humans have a shot, right? Which is like you know,
Which we shouldn't take for granted.
yes, yeah. I think all those things are optimistic. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, the Skynet and like the Terminators have weird limitations that
yeah,
I think like are good for the story, but like don't we couldn't count on.
yeah, sure.
But the reason people disavowed Terminator is because they're like, oh, well, that's sci-fi, and what I'm talking about is real. And I feel like that was just giving into the same, issue of the person raising it as like an objection to to an AI takeover scenario. But where was I?
So I guess like so you were talking about outside and inside game, and like early on the broader effective altruism community has been very focused on this like um inside game thing. And I find that kind of interesting because like I remember early on like the initial thing was like I don't know, people writing weird blog posts and like people being on a mailing list, and then like the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, or I guess originally the Singularity Institute, right, gets founded as this independent org, and they like I don't know write things about like how AI could kill everyone, and I don't know how or like how AI could like get really fast quickly, and like I don't know various like mathematical logic stuff on modeling intelligence. Like I think it actually took a while for it to be more like within AI corporate institutions. Um, yeah. Anyway, so okay, there's a ton of stuff there that we could talk about. I think I want to go back to just like the core like putting an indefinite pause on AI development. So concretely, like, yeah, what do you see that as looking like?
Uh, well, first, I am advocating this message, and the point is to get it to governments and leaders. And like, I don't want to micromanage too much, like what it looks like ahead of time.
Okay.
I want like mainly to be understood that like what I want is for there to be a pause on AI development. Not like I'm a little bit worried about at the advocacy level, like talking too specifically about what we want, and then maybe like getting that, but not other things that are important to the pause. Like I think the strength of the advocacy outside game thing is like actually getting to say what you want, like not having to just say like, here's a policy that I think could work, or like not having to be like super strategic. Like the point is to, I think, get the idea in people's minds and get them to like to ask for that too. Or for them to recognize like actually yes, like that's what I want. I don't really understand why people want this like technical like cap on GPUs or whatever, but I do understand that I want a pause. I see a lot of options that are acceptable to me, and certainly if those get more traction politically, then I would like want to switch into asking people to call your congressman and say like you want this. But I see lots of acceptable paths. Like I guess there's sort of two major ways. One is compute limits, and then another is setting up like monitoring regimes, and then just giving a lot of oversight power in case things seem to be going wrong, or in case who leaders get spooked or something, they can push the pause button. Compute limits is one that gets a lot of controversy from like the AI safety community because people are worried about this thing, hardware overhang, which you could probably explain better than I could. So there's like the biggest technical objection, I think, to the pause position is this issue of hardware overhang, and the idea is that, right now, the state of the art models are machine learning. And the way that you train a machine learning model is you have an algorithm that says like how to do the training from data. And the algorithms get better and better at doing the training, and they don't need as much compute, which is like hardware and like GPUs and other resources and memory. Like they don't need as many resources to do the training as well over time. And so if you throttle compute and make it so that people can't keep increasing the number of GPUs they use for training runs, they are gonna keep getting better at training. Like the algorithms are gonna get better. And so the idea with hardware overhang is that you might get to this point where when a pause is lifted, or when, like, I don't know, some actor is able to like get together more GPUs than they were supposed to, and you apply the same algorithms, like it works really well, and it kind of takes it into a new level of capabilities that were unanticipated. And like, so maybe, whereas like if you had let compute like go up slowly with algorithmic progress, you would have been able to keep more of an eye on the evolution of things. Like now you just suddenly have like maybe a super intelligence that you can't control, or that does things that are unexpected. Um, and that does concern me, because if you get a pause, I'm assuming that eventually something will happen to end that pause. Like it
Hmm.
seems unlikely to me that that could just be truly indefinite for humanity's future. So yeah, that's a concerning issue. That is really the only issue I have with pause, and there are a lot of issues with the status quo. So I continue to be a fan of pause. But if we can implement pause in a way that doesn't leave that open, like actually limiting algorithmic progress as well, even though that's a lot harder, it's not as easy to imagine how you would do that. Whereas with limiting compute,
Hmm.
there's really a near monopoly on chip manufacture. And if you could have them all be tagged or something like that, it might turn into a problem. Like, currently the US government monitors the sale of Sudafed because you can use it to make meth.
Hmm.
And it's not perfect. Like, people are still able to use it to make meth, but like you have to, show your driver's license and sign when you buy it. And based on that, they're able to like greatly reduce the amount of meth made by that process. And something similar like that with chips could work. I kind of lost my train of thought there. I
So,
suddenly
so that
became
was
aware that I was
so that
rambling.
was hardware
Yeah.
limitations. You also mentioned another potential policy, which was monitoring
Hmm.
AI development, basically. Yeah, could you say a little bit more about what that is like?
Yeah. So it would monitoring, licensing, just ways that the process of developing frontier models has to go through external regulators' eyes.
Hmm.
Uh, I think is important, because it'll just slow things down by default. Like that will just greatly slow down the development process if you have to get government approval for like multiple steps.
Yep.
Um, and two, there's just more permission there. Like if something seems wrong, for even if regulators aren't ready to go in now and say you have to stop, like if they're monitoring the whole process, they have the authority to do that. And things start to look worrying, then instituting a pause then by whatever means, like that might, I don't know what set of options they'd have available to them. Like if this is through some kind of agency that's set up to monitor AI development, then it could be through just like shutting down certain companies, or it could be based on like a type of training, or something like that. For now, it's hard to say like what exactly policy path. If we don't go for something like an agency, then like the policy to shut those things down would have to be more like triggers, based on exceeding certain thresholds or something like that, if there's less discretion there. Is that interesting? I guess I'm trying to get at that there's a lot of ways that you could institute a pause, and I'm trying to sort of adduce like what really matters to me about the pause versus like what are
Hmm.
just like different policy levers, and then like different ways it could go. So one
Sure.
way is to have an agency, and then they kind of use their discretion about like when they have the power to monitor, they have a sense of what's dangerous and they're allowed to shut down. And it doesn't have to be like a policy. That's what I was looking for. It doesn't have to be like a
Yeah.
policy like, ahead of time, we know exactly what we'll do if this happens, and like that's written into law. It could also be somewhat more dynamic, kind of like, maybe this is a bad metaphor, but like drug enforcement.
Hmm. So yeah. So the read I'm getting is just like, look, I want you want like policymakers to just care about this issue and be thinking about it, and like step two is figure out what exactly to do, but you see yourself as more at step one.
um, I think there's a lot of, I mean, we sort of know what the step twos options are for now. There might be
Hmm.
more step two options that, um, in fact, more options are available now than it looked like there would be like 3 months ago. A lot more, because mainly because a lot more people care. But yeah, as far as the advocacy goes, I think there's a lot of alpha, at least in the cause of AI safety,
Hmm.
of just saying what you want to the public, like because historically this is like not what we do. And like I said, this issue used to not be in the Overton window. It wasn't really possible to talk to the public about it. And so usually when you get into a cause area, there are already people, that's like one of the first places they go is like
Hmm.
this position, just saying to the public what they think. And like you say, like early AI safety was more that,
Hmm.
trying to appeal to people and just like get them to understand your whole concern. But for like various historical reasons, we kind of stopped doing that. And so I think now it's just important for people to like uh, man that vanguard. And then there are a lot of people who work on AI policy or like AI governance now, who are supposed to offer more of those like fine grained solutions. But I've discovered actually since I've been doing this that a lot of that work is like kind of a level up. It's like not really meant to be implemented. So there's sort of less as far as concrete policies than you would hope, but there are some new efforts.
Hmm. I guess one broad question I have is so in general, like I don't know, often there'll be activists for some cause, right? And they'll be like, I don't know, like taxes should be higher or lower, or like drugs should be, more available or something. And like, usually like marginal changes there come at some cost, right? Um, and if I imagine like trying to put this into practice, what I want to know is like, what kinds of costs should we be willing to pay? So for AI pause, like what would be like what things do you think would be off the table, or what do you think like would have to be the case such that you're like, oh man, this consequence is just like too much to be bothering with?
What's too big of a cost for an AI pause policy?
Yeah.
Well, I it just to push this a bit, like, I mean, a lot of people around me believe in something like 99% PDoom. Maybe not a lot, but some people around me believe in this, like 99% PDoom in like the next 10 years.
Hmm.
And I don't understand how they really could put almost anything as too high a cost to even just buy more time for but well, I shouldn't say that. I can think of like horrible torture scenarios or something.
Sure.
But personally, I don't know. I really don't like to give PDoom estimates because I just feel like I don't have like all the expertise all the technical expertise that I should to make that call. But mine is usually around like 40%, and it's like not, and it's like maybe over the next 25 years. That's just a very subjective, like by my feels estimate.
Hmm.
And I think it's weird that that's considered like low, or like, I don't know. People, when I say that initially, people will think like, oh, so you think it's like not a big deal. I'm like, no, it's completely unacceptable. Like, what are you talking about? This is still like the most urgent problem in the world. So yeah, I'm kind of, this is just like a side point, I guess, sociologically. I'm like kind of confused about what everybody else believes, given like that they'll often seem to think that pause would like come at too high a cost, or that like limiting technology or would be too high a cost, or like some kind of Butlerian jihad scenario would. I just think that won't work. But like, if it meant that humanity persisted, I think like how could that be too much? I don't know exactly what happened in the Butlerian jihad. I don't want to be advocating for that, but so. Yeah, like for me, what would be too much? Like, I guess like I have some probability mass on it just turned out that we were wrong and alignment by default was true, or it just like wasn't that. I could see that maybe there's just something big we don't understand. And once ASI is developed, it's more clear. So like, I guess I have to like consider a little bit like that possibility. Like I wouldn't want to do anything too strict, but I don't know. I'm fairly risk averse, honestly. Okay. I'm more concerned about like it just. Sorry, you're probably getting at like, would it be too much to have an authoritarian government that like seizes your electronics or something like that?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So that's one concrete example. Yeah. Do you think if that was like the way to do it, do you think that would be like worth it?
I guess if I would be worried about that policy, because I would think that it like was really brittle. People would be able to save their electronics, and if that was really what it took, like it just that policy probably wouldn't work. Okay. But yes, if that's what it took to, I guess this is all conditional on, like I can understand how this would seem extreme to somebody who doesn't think there's a chance that superintelligence could like radically transform our world in a terrible way or kill us, but like like what what would you do if you really believe that? Like, would you think like, well, we can't like change our lives radically, we just have to lay down and die? um Let me try to think like what I think is too much. Like if we just somehow like made our lives the hell we were trying to avoid, I think that would be too much.
Hmm.
We should just live out the time we have, and maybe we'll get lucky and it doesn't end up killing us.
Hmm.
As far there's a very common objection that a pause would have to be authoritarian, which I don't think that would be necessary. Maybe it would become necessary if algorithmic progress got to the point where you can't just limit, specialized
Hmm.
GPUs that are currently being used to train state of the art models. Um, but I mean, geez, it's a really weird version of live free or die. Like,
Yeah. So what about but like when you say like I don't know, like maybe like if an authoritarian government is what it took, which it sounds like you don't think that's going to be what it takes,
yeah,
but but you also are like, oh well, if we make our lives a hell that we were trying to avoid, and I think a lot of people would think of authoritarian governments as hellish. So like maybe concretely,
yeah.
suppose that like the one and okay, this is maybe like a weird hypothetical, but like suppose that the one AI pause policy that actually worked is we have to do like Stalinist Russia again. Like that's just what the world is going to be like. Um, is that like too far, or are you like
I
worth it?
mean, it does make me like really consult my worldview and be like, is this really going to happen? Is the problem really this like real? But the only reason I don't want to say it is like for signaling value, or I want people to really understand like why it is that I think it's, quite serious. But
Hmm.
I think that so I guess one way of putting it is like, I don't think that the people in Stalinist Russia would like all be better off dead.
Okay.
Uh, so like, I really don't think that's what it would take. I don't really see how that, like, for the kinds of right now, like what this would mean is like taking advantage of, regulating NVIDIA essentially.
Yeah.
Um, like, and then if NVIDIA is regulated, already it's like apparently very hard to replicate these chips, and like China's had trouble doing it. Um, I don't think that if we like start there, that what's going to happen is that like we get such good like advancement in that kind of technology that like suddenly everybody has it,
Hmm.
and we have to like run things like Stalinist Russia. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but like I wanted like just like bite the bullet on the hypothetical and be like, yeah, like they're like the kinds of having everyone like, be vaporized overnight or like die of bioweapons, and like there's no future for humanity, or just like possible like weird dystopias I can't even think of just because of how AI like changes our interactions, or like if it, for some reason wanted to enslave us, so that we would like, I mean, I don't know, like one famous example is like so that it would smile at us because, AI
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like told to make us smile, or so that we would smile at them. Uh, those the possibilities of what can happen in this like new world with another intelligence, like an intelligence that's greater than ours, that could want a lot of things, and it could want and could have, doesn't have the same constraints that we do. It does seem like rolling the dice, and I think I would choose knowing that I was going to live in Stalinist Russia over that.
Okay. Um. So, uh, so that's kind of it's not clear how communism is gonna how Stalinism is gonna solve this problem. But perhaps a more concrete or a more plausible hypothetical is so in this Time article you mentioned earlier, Eliezer Yudkowsky has been a major figure in I guess the less wrong community and in AI alignment. He basically had proposed this policy of like, yeah, everyone on Earth, like we're just going to make some treaty, or some subset of big countries are going to make some treaty that says like we're not going to do any really big AI training runs, and like they stop doing them. And if any other country, even non countries that haven't signed this agreement, like has data centers or things that are like actually doing these runs, we just like bomb those countries, you know, even if that causes a like incredibly terrible war. I'm wondering like I guess A, do you think that's like a plausible, you know, good policy, and B, or a plausible policy that would actually work, let's say, and B, do you think that is like too big a risk or worth going for?
Um, I guess my first thought is that like Eliezer has is this view that like when the AI turns on us, it's going to be incredibly sudden and it's going to want to kill everyone.
Hmm.
Maybe that's, I don't mean to strawman him, but like that's kind of the scenario that he's thinking of in
Yeah.
that situation. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I don't know if there would be other remedies possibly like for dealing with illicit training runs. Like I don't know if it'd
Hmm.
be necessary to like bomb them from orbit like right away to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Hmm.
I think also like context on why Eliezer, like that's become very infamous that he put that in that article.
Hmm.
But like context on that is like for years, for many years, he had confused me a lot because he would like say basically AI is going to kill us all. Like I saw him like I think like the day after he published Dying with Dignity or Death with Dignity. I forget get the title wrong sometimes. But you know, on Less Wrong, he published it on April Fools, which confused everybody, but basically saying that Miri's policy had or their plan had like gone from solving alignment to just like figuring out how to die with a little more dignity just because death was inevitable.
Hmm.
Because like no one was on track to solve the alignment problem. That was the claim.
Hmm.
And it was gonna and like AI was gonna happen soon. And I saw him like that a couple days later, I think. And even then, like people were like, okay, if you really think this, like, I mean, shouldn't people be like, shouldn't we be like taking action? Like people are talking about like violent action to like
Hmm.
stop, these models from being developed. And he was like so on it. He was so shaming about like you have to, so you're going to bring up killing someone without thinking about this for even 5 minutes, like this is why you have to have deontological side constraints against violence. And like
Hmm.
and he was so firm on that message for so long, and it always confused me because I was like, you're saying everyone is going to die, the whole future is going to be over, but not one murder would be worth it. It just makes it seem like you don't believe it, like what you're
Hmm.
saying. And I did get what he was saying. Basically, he was saying like I can't advocate this because it wouldn't work. If individuals just start killing people, it would be pointless. And if you start saying things about violence being acceptable, that and you're a public figure, like that kind of you could be like giving people license for to do bad things. And so the main thing that he would say is just like you have to have like a deontological side constraint against violence. So finally, he writes this article in Time, and he's talking about use state violence, and that's like a big difference to him.
Hmm.
And he said like he could have just written it more euphemistically and just been like, we need to have a treaty where everyone agrees not to do it,
Hmm.
or they risk going to war. He felt like he even like afterwards like wrote a tweet about how like Orwell, who he really admires as a writer, as like a political writer especially, said that you have to not euphemize violence, like you have to
Hmm.
just say it. And so his point was like, this is state violence, this is like how you would enforce a treaty of this kind of importance, but like
Hmm.
he didn't want to hide that like that is the cost that he was saying. And honestly, it had a huge emotional impact on me to read that piece because nothing intellectually changed for me about my views on alignment and AI safety, but like something was just emotionally unblocked because I had always kind of thought that people weren't serious when they wouldn't advocate for like going to war over something like this. Like you're talking about everyone dying. I mean, and you're talking about people like in this scenario, the country that's doing these training runs, like is playing with fire, like playing with something like much worse than a nuclear bomb,
Hmm.
and everyone's at risk. And so like if you believe that, like it makes a lot of sense. I think it only sounds bad if you still don't share that view of the danger of AI.
Okay. So it sounds like you think that like if this policy like concretely worked to pause AI, then you'd be willing to risk like war or like like bombing data centers or stuff like that.
I mean, I want to just stress that I don't think this is probably, if we take action now, like that this will probably be necessary.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but as far as like the question of like, would it be worth it? I mean, unless I'm just very mistaken about the danger,
Hmm.
it seems like yes. I mean, given the hypothetical that you're giving, if that's what it took to stop the development of more, dangerous superintelligence that we did not control.
Okay. Cool. So moving on a bit. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about being unsure about the tail end of like when you would or like you would want to unpause when it's safe or something. Can you can you give a little can you be a little more concrete about like when this would be or like what you would have to see to start thinking like, okay, we shouldn't pause this over now. This is fine.
I mean, one thing that's brought up a lot is interpretability. So, like the ability to interpret what's in the models. If we could full ability to, understand like how the model does what it does,
Hmm.
and why, uh, that seems like somewhat reasonable to me. I just have to be honest, like when you're talking about something much more intelligent than you and much more capable than you, I'm really not sure like how we know that's okay.
Hmm.
So my background, my PhD is in evolutionary biology, and basically, like when there's a new innovation in intelligence, like there's a lot of species that go extinct around that species. Like,
Hmm.
um, that's and like I don't know. I'm like I'm waiting for like alignment to happen, but I also have like some fundamental doubts about like what alignment is. Like maybe there's just not really such a thing as like stable alignment between entities of very different capabilities. But I'm not unreasonable. Like if we, are developing AI in like a safe sandbox, and we are able to like run little experiments with it where we get to kind of see how it interacts in the world without risking people, and it just keeps being okay for a really long time. I mean, I would get more and more okay with, and I assume it wouldn't be in my hands, whether or not to trust it at that point.
Hmm.
But I would feel more and more okay with like what the people of the future decide about that if they have more time to safely interact with it. But the truth is, like, yeah, I don't know what would ever like make me feel like cool. There's no risk here, you know. Um, it it strikes me as possible that just trying to control, like, have as a servant like something with of greater intelligence than you is just not tenable, like fundamentally not tenable. If their interests conflict with yours and their capabilities are great enough, then you'll be at risk.
Okay. Um. So sort of related to that. In terms of like when to start pausing. Am I right that you think like now is like the right time to stop doing frontier AI development?
I think we have to start advocating for pausing now, like considering that it'll probably take a while to take. I think like we should not. Sometimes people say to me like, "Well, wouldn't it be ideal to have a pause like in a couple of years when we're like more toward what they think is like the pre ASI like frontier, like about as far as you can go." First, I don't know why they think they know where this frontier is, But
Yeah.
second, I think that's probably what will happen if we start advocating now. And yeah, I'm not upset if we got a pause tomorrow. I wouldn't be upset about like, yeah, there were probably still models, GPT-5 and 6 maybe wouldn't be there yet. Like, I think it's pretty good that we have GPT-4. It seems like seems like that's safe. Seems like that's not the one. Yeah. So as far as like trying to time the pause like more advantageously, nope. I think probably as soon as possible is what I'd be happy with. Although I'm assuming it'll take a long time. So
Okay. Yeah. So one reason I ask that is that um if I think about like AI discourse or especially like you know AI discourse and knowledgeability among the public, as far as I can tell, the release of ChatGPT was just like a market improvement. Just because like people could start using a thing and be like, oh, this is like what's going on. And now like if you want to have a sense of like what frontier AI developments are like, you can just do that in your browser. And that seems like I think that's had a pretty salutary effect on like,
Mhm.
okay, what do we think like I don't know what how smart could these things possibly get, potentially what are dangers. And so if I think that like past frontier AI development was good, it seems like you might think, okay, well, like it might be good to like just keep on developing a few more of them, um, like not just for like economic utility value, but precisely because we can be like you can have a better sense of the risks, not just like within an ivory tower or something, but
Yeah.
like broadly publicly. I'm wondering what you think of like that position.
I'm worried that the more you do that, the more people. Well, so like right now we're in a pretty like opportune moment where people mostly if you ask them like, should we go really fast with AI or should we be slow and deliberate? Like
Hmm.
they'll say like, so like the new AI Policy Institute YouGov poll had this at like over 70% saying like slow and deliberate
Hmm.
uh, in the US. And that I think would change if people got more used to using LLMs or using AI
Hmm.
in their work or something. I think that they would get a little bit more attached to them. Right now, or like in the last like 5 months, when you ask people these questions, it seems like they mainly like people who not like tech people or even AI safety people kind of in the tech bubble, but like just regular people are just like, I only see downside. I don't need this, like I don't like this is just a cool novelty. Why would I risk things for this? But if we just keep developing stuff and it like becomes more useful to them, and especially if like the labs keep pushing integrations with like I worry that people will start to, even if they can perceive danger, like will start to feel more fond of it. So
Okay.
entanglement is an issue that I'm concerned about there. If you let development keep going, I'm also kind of worried that people just forget, they just get amnesia about what they ever predicted before stuff happened. Like
Hmm.
there's a moment like after ChatGPT, there was a moment when everyone was like, wow. And they knew what they used to think about AI, and now they know that they were wrong, but they just forget so fast. So I don't know,
Hmm.
maybe having like more instances of them, like people being genuinely surprised and kind of realizing that it violated their expectations, like would be good. But I also don't know like how much more useful those would be if it didn't like, because right now people are pretty, the position where they are now is mostly like that's dangerous, like why would we risk it? And I'm kind of worried that like other things would come into play, like I'm attached to this now, or like there would be more politicization, more polarization around like who's pro AI and who's anti AI. And right now like that's all very germinal.
Hmm. Gotcha. Um, so I guess like I want to talk a little bit more about yeah, potential downsides of AI pause policy. So there was this article oh man, I forget the name of it, but it was this less wrong post by a user called 1A3ORN. And it was something like ways that AI regulation could be negative. And they were basically like, firstly, I think the underlying view was something like, a lot of AI regulation basically has the form. There's going to be some regulatory agency that's like, some government organization, and it's going to be kind of kludgy and hodgepodgey, and you're going to have to deal with it now. And now it's like, okay, maybe they mandate misdirected safety efforts. So like, I don't know, a bunch of safety people have to like,
Mm-hmm.
work on the like government mandated target instead of stuff that would actually be useful. It means that like similarly safety work, it now has to be like legible to a state instead of like stuff that would potentially be useful that you could tell it's useful. You've got to like justify it to a weird organization that isn't very good at stuff. um it could be the case that like if a country regulates AI safety and other countries don't, then like the people who do the most regulation just become irrelevant, and like doesn't even matter that they did stuff. And it could be that like regulation tends to empower corporations, right? So like, especially, I think a lot of some proposed regulation is licensing style, where you have to meet certain qualifications in order to be allowed um, to make really smart AI, and otherwise you can't. And that you might think, this like centralizes power and these like
Mm-hmm.
profit hungry corporations. Maybe that's bad. Um, I'm wondering what you think about basically the kind of critique that says like a lot of these pause policies would be bad specifically for safety of AI systems.
I I think first I like pause because I think it fails safe. Like generally the problem with implementing regulations is that, things will go slowly and be inefficient, but that's like exactly the point with uh developing AI. So I like that. It sounds like Acorn is how I think of this person. It
Yeah.
sounds like Acorn thinks that only safety would be regulated, or based on that. I do remember seeing this a long time ago, but I don't remember exactly what they said. But uh yeah, it sounds like their concern is that like, oh, what if you sort of give one policy for pausing AI and then it's like implemented badly,
Hmm.
which is one reason that I think advocacy of what we mean and like getting voters to support that as well and like the spirit of what we mean is important, and our only levers aren't. This is kind of like a EA less wrong assumption. Often our only levers are not just like pushing on a specific policy, or like finding one weird hack. Like you can just like share your narrative. And it's true that like, yeah, maybe surely any regulatory body that is put in place will be inefficient. It's hard for me to imagine that penalizing AI safety more than industry. But that would be a problem if that happened. There's a lot of just general, like, from the less wrong crowd and like and EA as well, like distrust and like thinking that like government is like, so stupid and like can't. Sometimes I like uncharitably think that like what's really going on there is like, there's the illusion that with technical stuff, like we're in control. And then with like government stuff, like other people are in control, the government's in control, and like stupid people who aren't aligned with us, are in control. And I think that what Acorn said is definitely describes a bad thing happening. But I don't think that reflects on the viability of like all regulatory solutions. And there's a sense from the way that argument was recapitulated to me that like that's sort of, they believe that that's like the default thing that will happen with regulation. And I don't think so. And I think it's like it's privileging sort of the position we're in currently in a way that I think is not fair, like as if we have more power than we do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So when you say like, you think this isn't the default for how regulation is going to be, what? Yeah, I'm curious. Like, if you look at the world of like, I don't know, government regulation of stuff, like, yeah, would you broadly say that it's like basically pretty competent or like pretty, I don't know, useful or productive? Or
I guess I think that in this situation we do have some good handles, like compute. It is very much not to our advantage that most people do not understand the first thing about machine learning and training these models. But another thing that makes me think like this situation is particularly good for it is there are only like a handful of, only like a dozen companies that are doing state-of-the-art models. I just don't think that it's as hard as a lot of people like from Less Wrong will make out. I think that it's hard when you think about like government trying to achieve alignment. I think it's not so hard when you think about government trying to just slow things down.
Okay.
And stop them. Like,
yeah, I guess one reason I'd be sort of worried about that is like if the like broad plan is like pause AI in the sense of like we're gonna pause AI and like in the meantime we're gonna figure out how to make it safe and then we're gonna like unpause it again. Like if we're relying on the government's general like slowing things down and stopping power, you might think that applies like similarly to AI safety. Especially if you're of the view that like in order to really understand and like in order to do good engineering with these AI systems, we've really just got to we've got to like play with pretty smart ones because like how else are we going to know what they're like, yeah, I'm wondering what you think of that.
I think I'm kind of surprised how there was so little fanfare with like the change in paradigm about AI safety. Like all of the like beginner materials are about aligning with human values. And there's a lot of stuff about like V&M rationality and like, just sort of understanding the human utility function. And now just sort of quietly, it's all changed. Like, oh, we don't actually think that humans have a utility function like that. Or like, so what we're doing actually is just basically like playing with the models and seeing if they do stuff we don't like and then correcting them, like, and yeah, that to me there's like more of an update in there about like maybe we shouldn't do this stuff, or we should do it a lot more slowly if there's not a way to like mathematically know that we've solved alignment. If it's just sort of like you continue to train on a distribution of acceptable behaviors and then like within that distribution things are fine, but you maybe like steadily increase the distribution you're training on. Like I don't, it's more of just like a probabilistic training issue now. And I guess that's just kind of a side note. I'm kind of surprised that people seem to like move so gracefully from like the previous model to that, and then like now their
Yeah.
assumption is like we should be given access to models to like play with them instead of like, or not, to play with them and like red team them, and rather than like, oh, okay, maybe like all of the things that we worried about with the danger of AI are like heightened now because we're not sure if we can really know if the problem is solved.
Yeah, I guess from the inside, I think that so I think a big part of this is yeah. So I guess I kind of agree. I literally just the week before last gave a talk at this like alignment kid training seminar thing where I was like, no, VNM rationality is still utility functions are still real, guys. I don't know why we like gave up on those, but uh yeah. What should I say? Yeah, so firstly, I think a lot of that is just a change in personnel rather than like any given person like actually changing their mind. I also think probably a lot of that is just like a sense that like suppose you want to get into making AI safe, right? And you're at the start of your career. You're like, oh, what should I do? I think a really tempting option is just like do stuff in the ML paradigm, in the machine learning paradigm, because like you kind of know how to do it, and it's like it's a fruitful paradigm in the sense that like people can do cool stuff with machine learning. It's a research project that actually like bears fruit in terms of knowledge and stuff. And then when you're in this paradigm, you just do naturally end up with like let's play with ML models and see how it goes and be like kind of empirical. So yeah, I guess I think this explains the shift.
Yeah. I This like brings me to a sociological thing, and like I'm afraid this is going to be close to like sounding uncharitable, but this is just a thing I've been observing.
Hmm.
Um it seems like a lot has changed in the AI safety community as basically like I was reminded when I had been, around in like EA rationality for like 10 years, and I'd been kept up to date on AI, but I hadn't worked on AI safety myself. And there were a lot of things I didn't know about the thinking among people who did work on it until I was like really inspired to do the
Hmm.
pause thing. Uh, and one of them that I sort of forgotten is like most people who work in AI safety in this community, like VLS wrong, were originally into building AGI to bring about the singularity. Like, you mentioned
Hmm.
earlier, like Singularity Institute was it literally the same org as Miri, or was it,
Yeah,
yeah.
they that's I was actually around back when they were SI, but yeah, I think Elliot founds the Singularity Institute, or I don't know, maybe I think some other org was also involved, but yeah, it eventually changed to Mary, and I think at the founding, the original plan was like build AI and like have everything be amazing. Although I don't, my sense is that this is not the current plan. Um, and yeah, I guess somewhat famously, Eliezer used to think like, yeah, we should just like make super smart AI, and that's gonna have everything be amazing.
Yeah, it was just like a futurist, like interested in, and like there's a lot of interest in like longevity or like radical life extension. And the people who work in AI safety from that route, they just realized there was this problem,
Hmm.
with realizing that future. But there was still a lot of, I don't think that they ever considered like, wow, maybe we should just not have people build this given this problem. Like it was all the goal was always to get to the glorious transhuman future. Um, and the impact of that has like struck me a lot recently. Like I forgot why I initially brought it up, but
It was something about like, yeah, it was something to do with people sort of changing into a let's play with ML
right.
models rather than like let's do theory and make sure we mathematically know what we're doing is safe before we like set out and do it.
So this to me is kind of consistent just with like, wanting to be where the action is. And
Hmm.
like it's consistent with like there was some controversy about like should you go work for AI labs or not, like if now that they're hiring for safety people like back in the day. But it seems like mostly, I mean, people talk about unilateralist curse a lot today, but like
Hmm.
that to me, that's the biggest unilateral move that was taken, was going and working with AI labs and kind of committing the whole community to like not fucking up your relationship with them. And like and it just makes sense to me that like if you were ever attracted to working on safety in the first place because you want AI to exist and you want there to be this wonderful future enabled by AI, that you would want to
Mm.
also like be where the action is and be working on it.
Mm.
And that would be like considered pretty cool. And I do kind of think that people got captured, or I think that whole AI safety got captured by industry in that way. Like people kind of thought, oh, maybe now what the thing to do is to work with the development of the models, and what we have to do is kind of like be hands-on in this really cool process instead of like hands-off in this kind of like demoralizing process of like doing foundations of agency work that's like, you know, led Eliezer to write Death with Dignity. So yeah, I had just taken on faith that people like this is the way the field was evolving, and it seemed like this was the best direction for safety. You know, when I wasn't directly involved, but like now I kind of wonder, because I just see very similar reactions about AI in general. I see like reactions that I now think like are just pretty irresponsible about other topics, like including pause. And I kind of wonder like, oh, is this the same reasoning that went into like what people kind of wanted to believe was the frontier of safety research as well?
Mm. I wonder, yeah. So you mentioned that, like, to some degree, you think like the AI safety community has been sort of captured. Yeah. Why do you what do you think that looks like concretely? And can you say a little bit more about why you think that?
Um, I'm trying to think how much I can say. I've had a couple, like a number of experiences since I started doing the pause advocacy, basically being shut down, like certain directions being shut down because somebody had some relationship with a lab that they needed to
Mm.
keep. People in general expressed the concern that like if I was talking about pause at all, you know, this is like very, very early. Like I was basically asking around for like who was going to be leading this campaign so I could like
Mm.
volunteer. I didn't like dream that I would like be trying to spearhead something like the
Yeah.
public messaging.
When you say very, very early,
Like April, it was like the day after the Time article,
okay, but so
and
like
the 2 days after the FLI letter. Like
so this year.
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
so sorry, early in my change to doing this.
Yeah.
People were saying things like, "Oh, well, I'm nervous that like if EA says that, then like the labs won't share their models with ARC."
Yeah.
And and I've learned that like ARC has a policy of just extreme friendliness toward the labs, like that I think
Mm.
is kind of misguided. Like they think they're gonna get something back for that. I don't know. There's a lot of like lack of appreciation of like bargaining power. I think generally right now, a lot of people are saying things that seem really either they just don't understand that like when you have external negotiating power, like things go better, or they really think like this is so either they really don't understand that, or they just like want the us to work with the labs and not be opposed to them in any way, or not like make them uncomfortable. um yeah, other examples of this. Oh, Open Phil is very like concerned about pissing off the labs.
Yeah. I guess one thing that strikes me as weird here is like it seems like to me it seems like part of what's going on that seems weird is that there's this assumption of a shared we, right? So like if we say something,
Yeah.
like like if anyone who is friends of a friend of Paul Cristiano says something bad about AI companies, then then ARC won't get access to models or something. And that just seems like I don't know. I feel like there's something kind of bad about a world in which that's possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, that makes me think either the labs give people that impression and they like want them to think that they're going to be judged by everyone in their group and police the rest of the group, or that I don't know, that people just have very bad ideas about like how things work.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, it's true that effective altruism has become a bit more institutionalized, right? Like Center for, or I guess Effective Ventures is sort of the home of most EA stuff. Like, yeah, I don't know, but like there really, I think there really used to be a world where there were just like a variety of bloggers, and like I don't know if someone said something that wasn't necessarily that anyone else agreed with it. And I think like in fact the like I don't think it's like a weird perception thing. I think like it's in fact true that like the EA community has sort of become more homogeneous, and yeah, I don't know.
But you think that like it's just true that like anyone would perceive somebody who happens to be in the EA community saying something against AI labs to as like the same entity that was working with AI labs, or
Not exactly that. but like I guess like I think that that's sort of a problem, or I think that that's like more true than it would be in my ideal world,
Yeah.
maybe. I mean, this could just be a thing of me like
Well, it's
not
certainly
enjoying,
true
I
that
don't know,
like a lot of
bureaucracy
these
or
people would
whatever.
be funded by the same funder or something like
Mm,
OpenPhil, and like I could see like it makes more sense to me for a lab to like take that more personally. Although I think OpenPhil should just fund who they want and like not allow themselves to be intimidated that way. They would say that they're not being intimidated; they're just making choices based on what they think is like realistic and stuff. But like, I think that they would probably, take more bets on like a diverse portfolio of strategies if they weren't concerned about like being harmonious with the labs.
yeah. Um. Yeah. Maybe I don't know how related to this is, but one thing I've seen you speculate on about on Twitter is the role of life extension and how people think about AI. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts and I don't know, maybe questions there?
I I had okay. For a long time, I had spoken with my rationalist friends, and I kind of all thought we were on the same page. Like, yeah, if you don't freeze your body, there's like no way that you can be. The chances are still low, but like maybe you could be revived in the future. And I kind of thought we all like got that, but like with a lot of this pause talk, like the reasons that some people have given me, not many, but like four, which seemed like a lot to me, like both on Less Wrong and in person, for not supporting a pause is that they really want to see AGI developed in their lifetime on the off chance it will give them immortality,
Hmm.
or indefinite life or radical life extension. And that was a reason that they didn't want to pause, not because not because they didn't think that it could kill everyone, simply
Hmm.
because they would say things like, well, I mean, what's the point if I'm just gonna like die at 90 years old? Like, I might as well die in an apocalypse. Like, and
Huh.
like two people said that. So, and then it made sense to me, I guess, because like again, as I was saying, like the sort of original like transhuman like focus of the community that became Less Wrong was like post singularity, like living, being whatever you wanted. Um, it makes sense that like a lot of people would have these ideas, but I think like if the public understood that like a lot of the people who like know the most about this topic like also have these, are like have as part of their calculation like I want to live forever and I don't care that other people might all die like for my gamble, or I don't know if they want immortality for everyone, like think that the AGI is going to give them that. But it's an interesting angle that I hadn't really thought of, and it made me, I felt like pretty upset when I learned this, because I just kind of thought like, oh, like people are a lot more selfish than I realized about this. Like I thought that I believed the line for all these years that the point of doing AI alignment was to save everyone. Like it was because like somebody was going to develop this and it was going to be dangerous when they did. Um I didn't One person said a kind of related thing to me, which is that for every year we wait, more galaxies go out of our reach forever.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought, like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I thought we were all talking about like astronomical waste. Is like, isn't that interesting? I'm sure one day, if we keep developing, we'll like go to the stars and do stuff with them. Not like an imperative, that we must risk it all for.
Yeah. It's like it's a pretty small fraction per year. Like I feel like like if you actually, man, I forget the actual math involved here, but like my recollection is something like it's small enough that like if you can if you can improve the odds per year of like getting to the galaxies, then you'd much rather like wait and improve the odds than like risk it initially.
That's what
Assuming
I
it's
would have
something
thought.
like, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Maybe one thing that's going on here is like with AI existential risk. Like I think there was. I mean, it's always been a little bit adjacent to the effective altruist community, or like I think it's always been that a lot of people drawn to it were outside the effective altruist community,
Yeah.
especially just from a sense of like, well, if AI is like going to kill everyone, in particular, it'll kill you, and that's bad, So like, it's not like on some level you don't have to be like super altruistic to work on the topic, right? Um, but yeah, I honestly, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like not having these conversations, but they honestly sound kind of alien to me. Um, yeah, I yeah, I guess I don't know if I have anything useful to say here, but yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be really bad if humanity went extinct. I think that's worse than just me personally dying, to be honest. Um, and also like I don't know, maybe we can. Yeah, one fact here is that I've signed up to have my head frozen after I die, as Holly is aware, but listeners may not be.
Yeah, Daniel took off his bracelet that says this before recording.
Yeah, it's kind of jangly, so I don't want to mess things up. Hopefully,
Risking his immortal future.
probably not. But yeah, like I don't know.
I would also like to sign up for that. I haven't done it yet, but like I definitely think it's worth trying.
Yeah, and I can kind of see from a selfish angle, like, well, cryonics is not really guaranteed, right? For one, I mean, one big risk is just like, you know, you die and you want to be frozen, and you want those like, or they don't like to use the word death for it, but like whatever, it's like sort of the
De-animation
obvious.
or what?
Yeah, in fact, I think in fact that's the word they use.
No, I know.
Yeah, it's a bit. I don't know, it's vaguely spiritual, Anyway, yeah, like so for one, there could just be like a long period in between like when you die and when they like freeze you, right? And you might like really be worried about how much damage is happening to my brain that's like irreversible, you know, during that. Also, like the fact is that cryonics involves like pumping your body full of antifreeze, cooling you down to the temperature of liquid nitrogen, um, and hoping that so like one, you're hoping that like antifreeze is poisonous, right? Like there's a reason they have a label on the bottle that says you shouldn't drink it. Um, they don't use car antifreeze, but it's like conceptually similar, I think. Um, yes, actually, my understanding is that it tastes sweet, which is like a really unfortunate. Or is lead's
it's
also like
ethylene
that?
glycol. Apparently, it tastes sweet. And then, do you know the treatment for it? This is just a fun fact. You
Oh yeah.
drink ethanol
Oh,
because
huh.
it like gunks up like ethanol enzymes, and like that's ultimately what hurts your kidneys. But if
Huh.
you just drink ethanol, then it's a better competitor for it, and it just passes out of your.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. What was I saying? Yeah. So for
Yeah, they
one,
might be damaging you.
yeah, yeah, or like, I mean, it's not damaging you while you're frozen because like chemistry is just not happening once you're cold enough. But it takes a while to get that cold, and like at some point they have to warm you back
And
up.
how long ago did you die? Yeah, and like
Yeah. Also, like because you're because liquid nitrogen has such a lower temperature than the freezing point of water, you do get little
yeah.
cracks that hopefully, you know, like once you're assuming all these things can be fixed, like hopefully you can fix those. But anyway, I mean, honestly, for me, the biggest risking factor is maybe AI kills everyone while I'm frozen, right? But yeah, I mean, I guess from a very selfish perspective, I could sort of see that like, it's not living forever is not really guaranteed, and you know, it's probably a better shot of it with super smart AI. But
it just seems like there's so many steps in this plan. Like why like you can like either just not build the AI or you can build the AI and like hope that it wants to give you eternal life. I don't.
Yeah, I think. Well, if you think that AI alignment is like a reasonable goal, right? If you think like, yeah, we're gonna have really smart agents and we're gonna make them so that they want to help us with stuff, then you're like, okay, well, one thing I'd like is to be healthy for really long. And yeah, I think like so there's some abstract level which is like, look, lots of things are physically possible. If this is physically possible, then maybe a really smart AI thing could help us achieve it. There are more concrete goals which like maybe seem a bit more seem a bit less likely. So for instance, like I think like the biggest concrete way that phrasing yourself ends up working, I think, is your brain gets scanned and you get run on a computer, and then you have to believe that that counts as like you continuing to live, which I think that counts. A lot of people don't. But yeah, actually, to me, the like develop aligned AI and live forever plan, like if you can do step one, I'm actually like pretty optimistic about step two.
I mean, yeah. So for a lot of people, not for a lot. I don't know how many people, but for many people, more than I realized, like among the AI safety crowd, uh, saying like pause AI is like saying like you're gonna die actually, like and like that. I'm kind of annoyed that like they're dealing with mortality over this issue right now. Like that just seems to me like okay, like I so like you just on this issue you're just gonna hold out and I don't know, like cause threaten the future of humanity just because I don't know, try to live 40 more years or however long we think it's going to take. And then if it's not possible to align AI, then hopefully that's something we continue to see from a pause. Yeah, there's a lot of like attachment to this future where I've heard this is something I've heard from more people and probably like more core people is like the sentiment that like I would be disappointed if I just got old and retired. Like either it's got to be we like get to the glorious transhuman future or we all die in an apocalypse was like kind of the implication. Like
Huh.
and like that bothers me, like that people are that really bothers me from like the safety part of of the side of the equation, that like people also have these like strange apocalyptic beliefs. Like it's bad enough that like Sam Altman like thinks he's going to be Jesus, like bringing the AGI to humanity. Like it's the people in AI safety like have a bunch of like techno religious beliefs as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder. So if I think about this, I think the closest belief that seems not totally crazy to me that justifies something like this is roughly suppose you're a utilitarian, and you have some sort of totalist view of population, which says that like more people is better, like twice as many people is twice as good. Then you're like, okay, like if the stakes are we colonize a million galaxies or we don't, then like if AI pause means something like we just stagnate technologically and we just like never make it out of the solar system, then I think you're very willing to take a risk, even like 1 in 30 chance of aligned AI, uh, colonizing the galaxies. Like if that's what it takes, that's what we're gonna do. Yeah, I'm wondering,
I would
have you
like
heard
people
this style of
to
position, and what do you think of it?
I okay. I guess like I I'm very familiar with this style of position,
Hmm.
but I guess I just didn't realize how serious people were about it. I didn't realize like exactly what they're like. I thought that like this seemed like a very, very, very distant possibility. Like if a bunch of things go right, not just AGI, like
Hmm.
if uh yeah, like if because like to me it's like not at all obvious that you get super intelligence, and then I guess if you believe in some kind of like alignment to like moral realism, like maybe it would just do what was best for us. But if you don't, which I don't, I don't believe in moral realism. I'm not like totally sure about alignment. I think it just kind of remains to be seen. It seems sort of empirical, like how much aligned, you can be. Um, but I was like kind of shocked to like see people think that like the pause issue, like that would be like it would be threatening enough to a future that they apparently for other reasons think is like achievable.
Hmm.
Um, that they would oppose it even though like they acknowledge the level of danger we're in right now.
Hmm.
Basically for I don't like it's like sounds demeaning to call this a fantasy. Because like I don't think that. I think that that's a way that, humanity could unfold. But it does seem to me like to think like it's just right there if we get AGI and like I need to be a part of it. Like I need to, be one of the people who lives forever and it's worth like risking everybody else's lives. I like don't think very highly of it. I don't know. I guess like the probably the biggest like actual difference between my thinking and theirs is just that to me this was always like a much more distant possibility and I assumed that I would not be part of it.
Hmm.
I guess if you have from a young age like been used to the idea that it was, it was possible to live forever, and like yeah, this this for you like thinking about this possibility of things going wrong and like needing to pause AI is when you first really deal with death, like that's horrible. But I'm also kind of disappointed in people over that. Like I can't like to like let themselves, I guess, be like jerked around by like fear of mortality and like
Hmm.
not make the right brave decision for that reason.
So when you say you think it's a distant possibility, yeah, is that mostly because you just think like, look, the idea of aligning very smart AI that then like causes an awesome feature, like that just seems like
It's well, there's alignment is one thing, but then there's like what the AI would do or like what other limitations there would be.
hmm,
Um that just doesn't seem obvious to me. Like I see the argument that like if it maximizes according to like these things,
hmm,
then like we would expect to see like Dyson spheres around every star and like
hmm.
but I don't know. I mean, like we don't maximize around everything. I think there's like things about agents and like what the architecture of agents and stuff that we probably don't understand. And I feel like that's a story that has just bound to have like missing context and understanding. And like so to like pin all your hopes on that, I'm just kind of surprised. I didn't realize the extent to which people had or like thought that this was like pretty much inevitable.
Yeah. I think I'm more in that camp, or just like I think, or especially the Dyson spheres around every star thing. Like I don't know about every star, but it to me it feels like the same order of prediction of like humans are going to drill for oil a ton. Like like
Mm-hmm.
like I don't think that's like a specific prediction. I think that's just like yeah, energy is useful for a lot of stuff. There are a bunch of
Yeah, I brought
stars
that
that
one
are
up
just
because I thought it
twinkling,
made
you know?
sense. But
Oh, okay, okay.
like that, there's some ways in which you can just straightforwardly predict like it's gonna maximize on like needing energy. Like,
Hmm.
but like other things like I don't know, especially about like how it's gonna interact with our desires and stuff. Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think like how it's going to interact with our desires, you just have to like. I think the reason to predict that is something like yeah, we try really hard at alignment and make it, um, and then you
Yeah,
have to
I just don't know.
yeah. I guess even there's this free variable of like how plausible is something like AI alignment, where yeah, maybe there's this background assumption a lot of people have that like it's very doable, and I suppose like it's logically possible that alignment is just not a thing that happens. Yeah, to me it just seems so for me like I think part of the reason that I think alignment is really plausible is just like something like okay, I think I am aligned with me, but like, and I think I could somehow do quote unquote the same thing if I were quote unquote smarter, right? And so if I totally buy these two observations, then I'm like, well, okay, it seems like I can make a really smart thing that was, also trying to look out for my interests in the way I would if I were really smart. I guess that isn't a strong argument of like how easy it is to technically make that happen or something.
I guess it's interesting that you brought that up as an example because I kind of don't feel aligned with myself fully. Like, so maybe that changes my intuitions on it.
Interesting. Is that kind of personal, or do you want to say more?
I I don't know. I experience a lot of conflicting impulses, and I just have an experience of like controlled chaos in my head. Um,
Okay.
I have yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. I guess like if I imagine like trying to replicate what's in my head and like make it more powerful, I imagine like tidal forces kind of like possibly like tearing it apart.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't. I'm a very like rule following person, and like a big reason for that I think is so that like I have like something to go by. For like predicting myself, and like I try to offer that to other people. But I to like for someone to like actually be aligned with my like inner self, I don't know. And if they were more powerful, I think like yeah, just like one of the pieces would tend to overpower
Mm,
is my prediction.
fair enough.
I kind of have this view in general of, and I don't know if this is correct, but it's just like a view that's been shaping up for a long time of capabilities, like low capabilities are like what can like hides lack of alignment because like you just can't take that many options or like or you can't take that many actions or it's just in your best interest it's so overdetermined like what the right action is like with others because of your low capabilities
Yeah.
often and yeah if you raise capabilities like arbitrarily high it just seems like yeah like I imagine like depending on the kind of like entity you are like you could like break apart from the inside because of like how strongly like different parts like want different things or you could uh it's hard for me to imagine like that kind of entity being fully aligned to anything of lower capabilities. That if like you can when you're in distribution, I think that makes
Hmm.
sense. But like if you, how can you be like deeply aligned so that like it's the the same as like being that entity? You're never going to find yourself out of distribution as far as your like self alignment. I don't know.
Yeah, I yeah, it's an interesting question, and yeah, I do think one of the sad things about the AI alignment crowd is I feel like we still don't have an amazing definition of what we're talking about, right? Like in some ways, like actually getting there is half the battle, but yeah, it's rough. Yeah, picking up on that, I do think that I do sometimes. So not all anti-doom people say this, but you do occasionally hear like, look, we have like GPT-4, and it's not awful, like Miri disproven or something. And I'm always like, how is this inference working? Like it never makes sense to me. Yeah, just because like yeah, when you're smarter, you can scheming to deceive people starts making more sense. And I don't know, especially like it seems plausible to me that like the first time you can think of the plan when you can like scheme to deceive people is also around the time when you're like, oh, I can't actually make this work, therefore I shouldn't try. You know,
Yeah.
um, like in that world, you expect to not see a bunch of like deception attempts until it's too late. Yeah. Although I have seen, I saw a sketch of some argument that was like, yeah, if there's a world where like a bunch of AIs get trained, then like maybe even at lowish capabilities, like things will try to take over the world even when it's unlikely, just in case it works, because later AIs will like be misaligned with the earlier AIs. Yeah, yeah. That's kind of a tangent. I don't know if you want to react to that or not.
To the people bring up the multipolar scenario, and I'm not a lot to me now about pause and feel like maybe I don't like understand the claims enough. Like, but people seem to think that that contradicts pause. Like, or if you introduce a pause, like then you're gonna like take out the current leaders, but then like the next people down the chain are gonna be making a bunch of AIs that are like of more similar capabilities, and so yeah, I think that's based on a misunderstanding of kind of like what the pause ask is.
Hmm.
The pause ask is for uh, generally it's for global regulation, and it's based on capabilities, not like the companies. Like I think that's, frankly, I think that's kind of a straw man. Like,
I mean, I think in some ways, so one pause proposal that I've heard a bunch of people be excited, or sorry, I should say one AI regulation proposal I've seen people be excited about is basically some licensing scheme where like you have to have like this much benchmarking and stuff in order to like make smart AI. And in some ways that is like picking companies. I guess it's sort of the converse where you pick companies that are
well,
allowed to
the
do
way that
stuff, but
like Center for AI Policy's bill puts it is licensing at different stages of it's
hmm,
at 4 stages of development, and then I think one of the stages is deployment.
hmm,
Um, and their bill includes licensing, monitoring, like setting up a monitoring regime, maybe through an agency, and strict liability for harms.
hmm,
Um, and I like that. Yeah, I mean, I agree that it wouldn't make a lot of sense to just grant monopolies. I or that's not what I want. But
hmm.
you can do licensing in a way where it's pegged to the activity, not to the doer.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Although I still have this residual worry about licensing schemes that it's just like, or I don't know, if you can do them in ways that avoid picking winners, then it seems nice. But I don't know, it seems like very ripe for some sort of weird corruption thing to start happening to me.
The proposal, Cape's proposal, is
Yeah,
about,
I should say I'm not. I don't know about any particular
yeah,
proposal. I just hear about general idea.
but I think that they've thought through this issue, and
Sure.
I like their solution. It's their licensing is based on, they have a whole scheme laid out for like what would allow different stages to be licensed, and a lot of it is just recording and like submitting to monitoring and like submitting also to get the license. Like they might have to revise their plan. um really just like honestly just like giving government more time to stay abreast of these developments too. give their time to be oversight. That's the thing that's annoyed me a lot is just like, because I mean like tech knows what it's doing. It's ahead of the curve. People don't know how to regulate it. Voters don't know what to think about it.
Hmm.
So like they've got a whole lobby set up before anybody has really caught up to what's happening. And yeah, just forcing them to slow down so that there is more oversight, and so that they have to explain themselves more to people outside of their group, and I think crucially without a lot of their like epistemic assumptions.
Hmm.
I shouldn't say epistemic, but without a lot of their assumptions about the utility of developing AI and the safety.
Hmm. Okay, so this conversation has been a bit meandering. I'm not. I think, or I'm not quite sure if I have anything more I want to talk about. Is there anything you wish that I'd asked, or anything you really want to bring up?
Oh, I think I'd like to say is that I think a lot of people in our community, by which I mean like EA, AI safety, rationality, have been afraid of doing things like protests because it like feels too fun, or like too it feels too like people associate that with like ego gratification or something like that.
Mm.
And I would like to push back on that. I think it could be a huge morale boost if we could let it. And it's just, and it, I also want to like advertise that it can be very effective. It's not just for protesting, isn't always just so that like people can feel special or feel like confirmed in their tribe. It's the media really cares about it. Like they pay a lot of attention to it. They get a lot of you may have seen articles in Wired and The Guardian about Pause AI's protests, and they had less than 10 people at each of those protests, but they got incredible coverage for their position. And the media like really understands when you do stuff like that, what that you believe this, that this is important to you. It's something that's much easier for them to understand than like blog posts about AI safety. And I'd also like to push back on to be a little spicier. A protest is not the only way to like be in your identity and like circle jerk with other people and just feel like affirmed in who you are. And I think that's an impression that a lot of people have of activism in general in like the AI safety community. But I also kind of think just like living in your little online empire and being super pure and not doing the stuff to actually try to save the world is pretty bad. It can be a pretty bad circle jerk. So I would encourage people to consider other forms of, trying to safeguard the future, especially if you're not going to be harmed, or your other, career, your other efforts are not like inside game and not going to be harmed by being involved in outside game stuff. I would encourage you to do that. And I think the pause message is a very robust message. It's not easy to misunderstand, whereas something like Align AI, I think, is very easy for people to come away with the wrong message, or Regulate AI is something like, like people think we are regulating AI. We're like, making sure there's no bias or something like that. Like Pause AI is very robust. I think there's very little chance that people will misunderstand what you mean unless you just straight up disagree with the message. I think it's a great, like, big banner. And I think it could be a huge morale boost for us to do something different, and like not just bemoan that we're probably not going to make it.
Okay. So I guess wrapping up, if people are interested in AI Pause or in your work in particular, what should they do to follow all of that?
So on my Twitter, I have a lot of less polished takes about AI Pause. You can join the Pause AI Discord.
Okay.
And I think I can provide you a link, which is, a server where we discuss, I'm independent, but I'm also a member of Pause AI. We discuss sort of more mass action movement things related to Pause.
If people wanted to follow you on Twitter, how would they do that?
Oh, yeah. My Twitter is at Ilex Ulmus. So ILEX_ULMUS.
Okay. What is Ilex Ulmus, by the way?
It's so Ilex is the genus for holly and Ulmus is the genus for elm. So yeah. I wanted Ilex opaca, which I had used, which is American holly, which I'd used for other stuff, but it was already taken by the time I signed up for Twitter.
Okay.
So.
Gotcha. Great. Well, thanks for coming in and chatting with me.
Thanks, Daniel.